All right. Hi, guys. So I know I haven't quite gotten to meet all of you. So for those who don't know, I am Kate. I'm part of Wyoming Yosemite, like a lot of your staff. Right now, we are actually in Los Angeles on an outreach, which is why I'm not there and we're missing a lot of people. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, I am from Canada. I've lived here for a year, and I have spent a lot of that time studying to be spending time learning about being a missionary, reading the Bible, and right now I'm gonna share a little bit what I've been learning from Luke 5, which is when Jesus first calls some of his disciples. So my title of this teaching is Respectfully, Jesus is Weird. And what are you gonna do about it? So don't get me wrong, weird is not bad. Weird is in the sense of something that is unexpected and out of the ordinary. So something we need to know about God is that we are never going to fully understand him because he's just so big and so amazing that he just doesn't fit into what we can understand and what we can kind of make sense of. So there's always going to be an aspect of kind of like, whoa, what does this mean? What's happening? And we're not going to have answers to all of those questions until when we meet Jesus face to face. So this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it looks like when Jesus is meeting people in their day-to-day life and calling him to something bigger. So I'm going to read Luke 5, 1-11. Feel free to follow along. So on one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, and he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. All right, so what's happening in the story? So first of all, Jesus is teaching, and there's a lot of crowds. They've been following him around. This is new guy. He's sharing all this stuff that's new and exciting, and they want to learn more, so they're following him. So Jesus just gets into this guy's boat. Doesn't ask. He's just there. So he gets in the boat, goes into the water a bit, and continues teaching the people. Then Jesus tells them how to do their job, basically. He asks for obedience, and the fishermen are rewarded with more fish than they can handle. And in response to this, the fishermen, Peter or Simon, James and John, they're astonished, they're scared, and then they leave everything and go with him. So that's what we're working with, and we're gonna break it down a little bit. So starting with who's there. So first of all, we see the crowd. So they are following Jesus, they're sitting, they're listening, and it's their choice to be there. So they've decided that they're going to spend their day following this guy, seeing what he has to say. They are on the shore, so they could leave whenever they want. They're there out of their own choice, and they're there to learn, but also this is a big crowd. So some people are probably just there because their friend is there, because it's a cool thing to do. They've got nothing better to do. Might as well see what this Jesus guy has to say. So that's the crowd. And then there's also the people on the boat. So we have Simon or Peter, we have James, and we have John. So they can't leave. They're on a boat. It'd be really awkward if they just jump ship. So they're there. And it's costing them something to be there. They were in the middle of cleaning their nets, which is a very long process for the fishermen of that day. They had these big nets. They would throw them over, pull them all in, and they did this at night so that I guess there's just more fish. I'm not an expert. But they would spend all night fishing, and then in the morning they would clean their nets, get them all sorted, and then get ready to go back out again at night. So these guys have already spent a whole night working. They're tired. They're getting ready to go home. And now they're back in the water with Jesus. So those are kind of our two groups of people. And the question I want you guys to think of is just how close are they to Jesus? So the crowd is there. They've made the choice to come, but they're separate from him. Whereas the people on the boat, they are stuck. It wasn't initially their decision to be there, but they are so close to Jesus. And really what separates them is that the people on the shore, the crowd, is learning from Jesus. They're hearing his words, but the people on the boat are getting to know him, and they're seeing firsthand what happens when you say yes to Jesus. So, second question with that is, who is the crowd and who is the boat, who are the people on the boat now in our day? So who is it that maybe comes to church, is there because it's the cool thing to do, it's, maybe a little interesting, but I might leave when it gets too hard or gets too confusing? And then who is there like for the long haul, who has like stepped into the boat, who has said yes, who is like dedicated to Jesus and is spending time getting to know him? So that's really like the core question that we are looking at today, is like, what is that distinction and like which side are you on? But before I give you too much time to think about that, we're going to look specifically at Peter, and more specifically his reaction and his response. So the first time we see his reaction is in verse 5, right after Jesus asks him to put out the nets. So he says, Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets. So the word I want to focus on is the but. So Peter is aware of all of the facts. He is tired. He sees the crowd watching him. He knows this is a bad time to fish, and this is just some carpenter who's telling him what to do. And like, maybe he didn't feel like it. Maybe he knew in his mind that there wasn't going to be any fish and he would just be doing this for nothing. Maybe the crowds would laugh at him. Maybe, he was confident in his own ability to fish, but he chooses to look at Jesus instead, and he chooses obedience, and he chooses respect and honor. So Jesus in this time was known as a rabbi. He was a teacher. So in this culture, they would choose people to be their students, and they would like learn from them. They would live life with them. And the point of the students was to become their rabbi, basically. They wanted to be like exactly like them. So Jesus has a lot of, he had a position of respect, but he was not Peter's rabbi in this moment. So like I said, Jesus is a carpenter. He spent his early years learning from his father Joseph how to work with wood. He technically, in all human sense of the way, is out of his depth. Peter is the one who has learned from his father, from his family, how to fish. So Peter basically had no good reason to do what Jesus said. But there must have been something in him that recognized Jesus as the Lord and as the Messiah that they'd been waiting for. And he chooses to obey, he chooses to put in the effort, and he chooses to put in the nets. So immediately we see what happens because of that. He chose to say yes, and he is blessed with so many fish, so much more than they could have asked for, so many more than they could handle. And all of Peter's doubts, any hesitation or anything that would have told him not to obey in the first place is immediately gone. And all that's left is a miracle that couldn't have happened without his yes and without Jesus' power. So next, so that is Peter's response. He hears Jesus say something that seems dumb, something that seems impossible. He says yes anyway and is blown away by Jesus' power and a lot of fish. So next is we're going to look at Peter's reaction. So James and John are here now too. They're pulling all these fish. The boats are sinking. Instead of helping his friends, grabbing a couple of fish, pulling in the nets, Peter falls down at Jesus' knees saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." And says because they were astonished at the number of fish that they caught. So Peter's reaction to this miracle is, "Get away from me." He is afraid, and he has an understanding in this moment that he is like face to face with God. The Israelites, way from the beginning, knew really, really well what God's glory meant for them. So way back when they were on Mount Sinai in the desert, the Israelites, when they had just been freed from Egypt, they were slaves for 400 years, and God brought them out of that, and he brought them to a mountain where he was going to meet his people. He was going to give them rules, he was going to give them instructions, he was going to give them guidance, and all of this he was doing through Moses. So they get to this mountain, Moses is getting ready to climb up, and God's glory comes, and it comes like a storm on this mountain, and there's like thunder and lightning and glory, and it's the goodness of God that is being like realized in this world and in like right in front of them. And immediately the Israelites, they fall down on their knees and they say, "No, like I can't handle this. Like get away from me. This is too much." So all the way from the beginning of Peter's culture and his understanding of God is this like resistance of I'm not good. When you see God's glory and his just like the power that he has, we see so much how we fall short of that. So Peter's reaction is like, "Get away, I can't handle this." But then we see Jesus' response, and he says, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." So when Peter realizes that he's out of his depth and he had doubt in his heart and that he didn't understand what was happening, as soon as he tries to push Jesus away, Jesus says, "No, you are the one that I'm going to use. You are the one that I'm going to encounter." And in a couple years, when Jesus is about to go back to the Father after he has died and been resurrected, he takes Peter and he says, "You are the rock on which I will build my church." So we see so much in Peter's life and his journey with Jesus, how Jesus meets him in his weak moments and uses that to speak into his future. So we see Peter encountering God's glory. We see him realizing how he falls short. And then we see Jesus coming and meeting him where he's at and filling in the rest of where Peter can't do it himself. So we have seen Peter's response to Jesus' demand or his request. He said, "But at your word I will obey." And then we see Peter's reaction to what Jesus does. He says, but Peter falls down on his knees and he says, "Depart from me." Jesus says, "No, I will use you to be fishers of men." So next, we're going to look at Peter's response to this. So I'm just going to read this last section again, and starting at verse 8. But when Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken, and so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. So, Peter, James, and John all have a response to this encounter and this just time with Jesus. Immediately, they leave everything. So, it feels a little like it's kind of just against common sense. They've just been blessed with all of these fish. They have such abundance in what they do for a living. This would have helped their families out a lot. It's tangible. It's right there. It's exactly what they have spent all night and probably a lot of their lives looking for is like wealth. It's abundance. It's blessing from God. But immediately they leave it because they know that the one who gave the blessing is so much better than the blessing itself. There's a verse in Philippians, it's Philippians 3:8. It says, "Indeed, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus." So right in this moment, they see that what they were seeking, what they were pursuing, what they wanted so much was empty without God and without a relationship with Jesus. And just they see that like everything Jesus is offering is so much more than what they have been looking for. So like, why would they hold on to those fish when they could have the one who made them appear and who has already been teaching so many amazing things? So immediately they leave their nets. This would have been a huge sacrifice. Like I said before, this is their family business. This is what they do. And immediately all three of them leave their nets, and we don't see them again like fishing as a job for money. And it's just, I just love this response because it's just so immediate and so complete for them to just turn and go. It's kind of like the same reaction that Peter has when he sees the fish. He falls down at his knees and he doesn't help anyone. He just immediately turns to Jesus and says, like, "You are it. This is what I've been looking for." And we see this in Peter also. There's another story later on when the disciples are in a boat and there's a storm and Jesus walks to them on the water. And as soon as Peter sees him, he says, "Jesus, if that's you, call me and I will come to you." So Jesus calls him and says, "Peter, it's me." And Peter hops out of the boat and starts walking on the water. And it's again just that one of those moments where Peter sees Jesus and he recognizes him and he just jumps and he goes. So the next thing we're going to look at is their calling. So Jesus says, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." So Jesus has come to them in what they do, what they understand. He has shown them how he is Lord of that. He has shown them how it's done. He's gotten all these fish, but he continues to use language that they understand. He says that you will be fishers of men. So he is redeeming their skills and he's redeeming their passions for his purpose. So that doesn't mean that they understand what that means. It doesn't mean that they know exactly what's going to happen. They don't have a 10-step plan of their life. But Jesus is meeting them where they're at, and he is walking with them through the rest. So everything that they've been doing isn't worthless. It's not pointless, but God is using it for something better. Also, if you're confused by fishers of men, he means that they're going to be gathering new believers. They're going to be preaching the gospel. They're going to be building the church and bringing people back to God, just like they had been scooping up the fish in those nets. So something I want you guys to think of is, what skills do you have that God is asking you to do more with? God is so gracious. He has given us good gifts that can be used for his purpose. Sometimes we just have to be willing to accept the invitation and invite Jesus into what it is that we're doing. So on that note, we're going to go into some processing questions, and then you guys are going to split up into your small groups. So first question is going back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's, are you on the boat or are you in the crowd? So remember, the real difference there was how close are you to Jesus? So are you like in the boat? Are you committed? Are you there? Is it costing you something? Or are you still in the crowd? Is there some distance? Are you still like holding some freedom to leave if you want to? So where are you at? Are you in the boat or in the crowd? The second question kind of goes with that. It's, are you okay with staying where you are? Are you okay with that boat or that crowd? Just take some time to think about that. And then if you're in the crowd, is God asking you to move? Is he calling you deeper? And then if you're in the boat, is God asking you to respond? And what net is God asking you to leave behind? So like Peter, James, and John, they left what they knew was comfortable, what was giving them support. And for them, it was finances, it was a job. But what is it that God is asking you to maybe leave behind for something better? And then the last question I had already just said is, what are things in your life that God could be redeeming for his purposes? So what has he blessed you with? What has he gifted you at that you could be using for God's glory, for his purposes, for his plan? And how can you invite him into that? So that is all I have for you guys. And yeah, Merry Christmas from us, because we're not going to see you again this year, but I cannot wait to see you guys when we get back, and we'll have lots of cool stories of what God's been doing.